if you're dealing with things that don't serve you, it's wasted energy that you're consuming that could go to the things that do serve you. And I don't want to live like that anymore, man. I wasted so much of my life doing that.
Hey, welcome to 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. We're a father-son leadership podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And folks, PTSD comes in many flavors and levels, and sometimes cutting down a tree in your front yard can be a cause of PTSD. Fortunately, Camden, I think you put that more in the lessons learned as opposed to Strider, your sister's dog, who he still got PTSD. She's been feeding him cannabinoids ever since, and he ain't recovered yet.
No, sir. Yeah, I'm definitely more the lesson learned. But that being said, I ain't cut down too many trees since then, so it might just be avoidance at this point.
Yeah,
which is a lesson learned. That's a lesson learned. There we go.
Well, there you go. There you go. I mean, avoiding problems. I mean, if you can avoid it, why deal with it, right?
Hey, sometimes you avoid a problem for a year and a half. Some guy comes up knocking on your door at 8 a.m. and offers to take care of the problem for 20% of the price you were supposed to pay for the problem. So things work out sometimes.
There's your leadership lesson too, folks. If you ain't got to make the decision today, then don't make it today. Gather more information. Wait for a better solution to come up for that problem. Adam, you got any trees that need to be cut down in your yard?
I don't. Thankfully, that would have been a problem about 2 weeks ago because Milton looking for his damn stapler.
That's a new. I had heard that one yet. Milton's looking for his stapler.
I'm going to need a definition. I'm completely out on that one.
So this is showing my age, but Office Space, one of my favorite movies ever. Yeah. Dry comedy. The office worker in there, his name is Milton. What's really funny about
he's the glasses
Milton,
one, right?
Yeah, yes. Yeah. And always his whole show there that he's looking for a stapler. They move him to the basement. They don't like him. And then he ends up burning the building down. And what's funny about that is Hurricane Milton, obviously same name, actually made landfall in Sarasota, where the actor that plays Milton is from.
Oh, now there's a trivia point I was not aware of.
Yeah, there you go.
Boom.
Dang. So, did you have to do any cleanup with the flooding or anything, or y'all elevation is 6 feet instead of 4 feet?
Yeah, so I'm on the East Coast, man, and we got very, very blessed and fortunate that a lot of wind shear as it made landfall, so it lost a lot of its strength before it made it over here to this side of the state. I actually fell asleep, and it didn't wake me up. So I woke up the next morning. It was just a little bit rainy and windy, and it was kind of gone. Took all the panels down and just had to clean up some palm fronds and leaves that had blown around, but nothing major. And I'll tell you, man, it was an emotional roller coaster for me because it was supposed to be really bad for the whole entire central Florida, both coasts. And I was like, man, freaking out. And what do you do? I worked my ass off to buy this house and have this house. And you're stuck. You can't do anything. There's nothing you can control with it. So it was an experience.
There's some real irony there, and I've joked about this many times. I don't know if I ever have on the show in the heal thyself doctor sort of way. We all know that in the end, it's the house, even as much as we know we've poured our heart and soul into it, in the end, it's still just a thing. We know that, but when it comes to that reality of something, old Milty coming down the road, you can't do a damn thing about it, can you?
Nothing. Just sit there and be in a dark cave and just wait. And it's like it. And you're right, man. I understand the price I pay to live in Florida as I get to deal with hurricanes. I understand that it's just stuff. And I tried to take that approach to separate myself from it. And I learned a lot about myself in that entire week prepping for the hurricane and all of that. And I was like, yeah, I guess clearly I'm not as willing to let go of the stuff and things as I thought I was.
Well, there's also the balance of it. I would say of you put forth the effort to protect it,
Right.
but then if it does happen, our good buddy Flick, he lost everything in the Waldo Canyon fire. What was that, 10 years ago or so?
Yeah.
I mean, literally, other than what they grabbed as the fire was coming over the mountain, burning all the houses in the neighborhood, driving their 2 cars and their 2 kids out of the house, their 2 adult kids, but gone. Not a damn thing you can do about it.
Nothing. Does it start?
Yeah, it's a weird balance, because that's the other thing, and I think this is kind of what you're getting at there, Dad, with that balance is at the same time, as much as we all might want to talk about, being at peace and zen with all that, it's like, hey, what happens, it's outside my control, amor fati, all that kind of stuff. If you can bail the water out of the house, you probably got to, get to work a little bit also. There is a balance there, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just some prep work to it. I mean, I think that there's a good point. It's not laissez-faire or Adam, your favorite phrase, I'm sure, is inshallah.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, inshallah, God willing.
But the irony of it is, inshallah, and Adam and I are saying that in a tongue-in-cheek, cynical way, because the people we knew that said that most times use that as an excuse not to do anything. And that's if God wills the sandbags to be filled, they'll be filled. It's kind of
there's I gotta say, there's a funny culture thing, because I've had that with my mother-in-law, and and I'm gotta be honest, I'm trying to think of what it is in Spanish, but I can't quite think of the phrase. But she'll say that of like, hey, so you coming over for dinner tonight? And she's like, God willing. Like, are you driving over or not? Like, there's a certain point where, yeah, God can will it, but you got to will it a little bit too.
You take a little responsibility for that action there.
Yeah.
Which I'm going to bring us back around to the business side, because there's an interesting thing. One of my favorite random kind of fun facts goes back to, I think it's the first Freakonomics book, but they talk about the Protestant work ethic. And there's this really interesting thing where they talk about that cultural shift in Europe post-schism, where you saw Protestant countries do a lot better. And it's like, oh yeah, well, because, we're Protestants, of course you could, act like that's the whole reason. But one of the things that they talk about, or Dubner talks about in the book, is this idea that the Protestant theology at the time meant that you had control over it, whereas the Catholics at the time were very predestination based. And I think that kind of goes back to the core of the conversation we're having, which is if you believe you have control over stuff, then you can get that control and you can make an impact. But if you believe you have no control, well, then you don't have any control. And I think that's a big lesson inside of the business as well, that you have to have that idea that you have control so you can carry things forward. And if you don't think you have control, then you definitely don't.
Yeah, it's a mindset thing, period. If you're not in the right headspace, good luck.
Yeah. And it's I was trying to get out of that rabbit hole, Camden, but I'm still having trouble with it because I just love it. I mean, there's so many great life lessons there of that. I can reference a friend of ours that, and matter of fact, I had this conversation with another business owner last night. God's guiding me to do this, but I've still got to do the work.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And I think there's some of that in there in the auspice, and folks, if you ain't a believer, then you can either turn it off or say the universe gave it to you. But that idea came from somewhere in your head, that morphosized into this business idea that you pursued, and you have to put in the work. The universe, Allah, God, Buddha, whoever you want to, you can sit there on your front porch and pray for it, and watch all those opportunities of that thing coming to you and knocking on your door, and you're saying, there's a great analogy of this, and I never remember it, of walking, where you at, Jesus? And, because you walk next to me and then there's only my tracks in the sand or something like that. And Jesus says, well, I was carrying you the whole time. It's kind of that sort of thing. Well, hello, genius. You got to put the work in. That's that idea, that faith is that the work I'm putting in is going to lead to what I say I want to do. And Adam, I would throw this at you in the business idea thought process of, when you got out of the Army and you started living life outside the uniform, if you will, how did the idea for the strategic veterans start to metamorphosize? I don't know why. That's a big word that I'm not using.
That's a $5 word.
That's a good one. I like that.
Yeah.
How did, man, that's a tough question, because I spent about 8.5 years before I did anything. And adding to what you were just saying, I truly believe the difference between success and failure is the amount of action that you take, period. It's the delineating factor that leads to success. More action equals more success, period. And I was, by and large, not taking any action for a long time when I got out. I did the typical ACAP blueprint things when you get out of the Army: write a resume, use your GI Bill, go to college. Because let's be honest, when I was deployed every other year, I didn't have time to go to college. I tried once, and 2 weeks after I got the commander's approval, I had to go get the commander's approval to drop the classes because we were leaving, So for me,
they've done that.
I think really what it was is it's a combination of the ayahuasca experience I had opened my eyes to, I am the right person to do something about the suicide epidemic and walk the walk instead of talk the talk. And that's really how it came to be. I got tired of sitting on the couch talking about, I'm tired of my buddies dying and taking their own lives. I need to do something about it. I have no idea what that looks like, but let me just take an action, and hopefully that'll inform the next action. And then it'll inform the next action. And here we are almost a year later, just a little bit, a month shy of a year. And it's very true, man. Every action I have taken has informed the other actions that I will take. And, it leads to doing shit like this. It leads to learning from two awesome human beings who I would have never otherwise met or spoken to. And, it informs then I'm sure by the end of this, I'll have some kind of learned something that I can take action on and implement today,
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, Adam, how did you find your first action? Because I think that's an interesting thing. When you're looking at, especially like a big problem set, very sticky, messy problem, it's like, yeah, taking action, it's good, but what the hell do I do to get started?
Yeah, so I love this question because it's not always pretty, right? So what led me to take my first action was one of my very best friends in the whole world. We served together. He was my subordinate for a little bit. I don't look at him that way. I look at him as an equal. He challenged me. He moved in with me he's kind of a geographical nomad. He likes to be different places all the time. So he was coming back from Colombia, a little 3-month stint down there. And he was like, I don't want to go back to California and live with my sister. I was like, well, come stay with me and we'll do some shit. We'll figure something out. And he came and stayed with me. And the day he got here, woke up the next morning, set up a desk in my office so he could work and I could work. And he challenged me, get on LinkedIn, post something every single day, and engage with 5 creators that resonate with you, who are talking about something that interests you, and just make a habit out of doing that every single day. So that was literally the first action I took. And it had nothing to do with what I do now. I probably started, posting about personal branding, not knowing fuck all about personal branding. Sorry for the language.
No, you're good. We're past the 2-minute mark. That's all I care about.
All right. Yeah, I've been holding that. But I didn't know fuck all about what I was doing, how to talk about personal branding. I had just seen other people talking about personal branding. I was like, let me do this, right? Then it switched to fucking SEO. Then it would switch to fucking marketing, or at one point it was about designing websites. What a fucking joke that was. I'm not cut out for that shit. And honestly, man, through that, I started meeting people like yourselves, and they would ask me to book meetings on their calendar, which I thought was really really strange. It was a foreign concept to me. And through booking meetings on people's calendars, I would tell them kind of what I was trying to do, the belief that I had in being kind of a digital entrepreneur and making money on the internet. And they would give me advice. And a lot of it was advice I couldn't use, but it was tools that I could put in my back pocket and that I would eventually come back to when I understood and had a level of knowledge that would allow me to implement them. And so through that, I ended up in a couple of paid communities to get some accountability partners and some mentors that would truly open everything up for me. And that's really what I did. That's the first action I took, and it just led to more action.
I love that. And I think that is, we've talked about that in so many different ways on the show and in our, in our leadership program. It's just take the action, just take the freaking step, dude. And you know what, if you don't know what step to take a guess at that step. I think that's the, like your buddy challenged you, not everybody's got a clairvoyant nomad best friend, who's going to give you that guidance. But you know what, if you just, hell, you just got some guidance right now. Hell, I wrote that down because I love that. Just 5 people, engage with 5 people on social media. You don't even have to talk to them, Mr. Introvert. I don't want to talk to people. Oh, people make me nervous. Then just post something on the internet. It's some social media thing. Engage with somebody. Holy crap, it doesn't hurt.
For
What's
sure.
the worst that could happen? They block you and you never know. You don't see their post anymore.
It's not as big a deal as you actually make it out to be. And,
I know.
I mean, taking that advice even a little bit further, if you don't know where to start, chunk it down. Let's think about some things that you're going to need if you want to start a business or you want to grow a following. You're going to need a following. You're going to need an audience. Well, how do you get a damn audience? You got to start building one. And as much as we as veterans, I'm sure you agree with this, Otis, particularly given your career path, we don't like to post. We don't like social media. We don't like to be public about. We're very closeted and want to keep all that shit private. And I think there's a certain element that we're all kind of like somewhat embarrassed to start posting because, the whole world's going to see everything that I put out. Yeah, that's bullshit. It took me about 6 months before I'd see impressions over 100 on a post. You know what I mean? Like, wasn't nobody looking at my shit. And it wasn't until I dialed in the messaging, did a brand workshop, understood how to talk to my audience, that everything would change in that regard. So, adding to that advice, just fucking start, man. I don't care what it is. I really don't care. Take an action. Just take an action, because taking one action and having any results, positive or negative, will enforce that taking action produces some kind of result versus, like you said, sitting on their front porch, praying it away. Prayer is powerful, but it's not going to make your wildest dreams come true. Only action's going to do that.
You said something that reminded me, watching. Yes, I am being generationally outside of the norm. I was watching the YouTube last night.
You can't say you're outside the norm if you then call it the YouTube.
Dang it. I was so proud of myself.
Oh, come on, Dad.
So I was watching YouTube, and there's Theo Vaughn, who is one funny Cajun SOB, and he was interviewing Tony Robbins, and Theo was talking about his problem with being proud of himself.
And I love this clip. I know what you're talking
you've seen
about.
it. Cam, I highly recommend you watch it. It's about 15 minutes long. What I thought was great about what Tony said was, quit frickin' saying that.
Yeah.
Every time you say it, you reinforce that. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because it's the same thing with I'm going to sit on my front porch and pray Pray for God to put money in the bank. Pray for God to grow my business, and just wait for something to happen. And that fear that we create, the unfounded fear, the gremlin, I like to call them, that's gnawing at my ear, preventing me from doing it. I keep repeating that in my head. Oh man, what if Joey sees what I posted? What if my old first sergeant sees that I said something about the op we were all on? And
yeah, right.
And if that's your reason to stop, I mean, I just keep going back to it, because I've done a handful of Tony Robbins things. I really like his messaging, and that messaging, just simplicity of that. Quit repeating it.
Well, and adding to that, Camden touched on this kind of in the beginning when he was talking about the Protestant stuff, and I related it back to mindset. I teach this as well to anybody that I interact with that's struggling. How you talk to yourself, your internal monologue matters. And I can point you to some really awesome scientific studies with a glass of water that's put in a freezer worlds away, where they shout obscenities at a cup of water and then they go freeze it. And you can see different patterns based on how they talk to the water and how it freezes. Your words have a lot more power than you even realize. And, I'm just as guilty of this. It's the largest part of the reason why I spent so long in what I call the transition hole when I got out before I got well, is because I talk to myself like shit. I beat myself up like the majority of people do, not understanding that has the most negative side effect on everything that's going on in your life.
I'm curious, Adam, on that, because this is something I definitely struggle with also. There's this balance there, because at the same time, because I don't disagree with anything you're saying, but I think it's another layer to it, right? Which is the being your own biggest critic in a lot of ways is what drives you forward. I can think about leaving rugby practice yesterday before on my way to pick up my wife for a birthing class, right? And I'm going through and I'm thinking about all this stuff that I was doing wrong and all that. I'm sure I was not a bad coach, but me looking at all those things that I thought I might have done poorly is what makes me helps me to get better and better and those kind of things. But Adam, to your point, I was not in a good freaking mood. Like, I was beating myself up. So it's like, what's that balance there? Because I think that's the tricky thing, is you don't want to ignore those things. You don't want to act like there's not a problem. So what are your thoughts on finding that balance?
Yeah, so that kind of moves into like the level of self-awareness you have for yourself, and then being mindful of like what you were saying, like you're evaluating all of those things that you think you did wrong. You have to take that a step further and then evaluate, okay, am I approaching myself with grace? Am I giving myself grace to be a human being and understand that I'm not perfect in everything that I do? Okay, that's step one. And so when you start approaching those emotions or those thoughts or those whatever through grace, you start to see, okay, I'm mad at myself for this. That's probably outside of my control or my immediate control. I can't control that, and it doesn't serve me. So I need to let it go. I'm aware of it. I'm aware that it's a problem. I'm aware it's an issue that I'm going to have to address at some point, but it doesn't serve me to be bent out of shape about it right now and beat myself up over it. Right. And then when you do have to beat yourself up over things, just again, approach it with grace and have leniency on yourself, because if you beat yourself up too much, you end up beating yourself backwards. You erase all of the progress that you have made when you're working on these specific things that we're talking about. So I hope that's a pretty clear answer on how I maintain the balance with it. I just try to approach it with grace, give myself grace, understand that I am not a perfect human being and I never will be, and then figure out which ones of those things serve me and kind of take it from there. Because if you're dealing with things that don't serve you, it's wasted energy that you're consuming that could go to the things that do serve you. And I don't want to live like that anymore, man. I wasted so much of my life doing that.
Let's dive into grace. I would love for you to define that more, because I think it's such an important understanding. It's such a simple word. If you don't mind, let's dive into that.
Yeah, let's dive into grace. What does grace mean to me in my own words? It's really just loving yourself, giving yourself enough rope to make mistakes and know that it's going to be okay, right? Just having that mindset of like, I'm not perfect. I was made in God's image, and everything is happening for me, not to me, kind of deal. And if you can approach it like that, I think it makes it a lot easier. I know that's a kind of a convoluted definition, but I haven't given that much thought. I just know that you have to have grace with yourself. You have to forgive yourself. You have to know that you're not perfect. And that's really kind of what it means to me.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on balancing that with the accountability? Because I think for myself, that's the other. I am the extreme where I am like the anxious and I'm going to get everything done, or well, you don't have to get it done today. Today is not perfect, and so I just fuck off the rest of the day. I'm not always to those extremes, but I think that a lot of people find themselves that kind of a pattern.
I think for me, they work hand in hand. I think by approaching all of this stuff with grace, you become your own accountability partner because you have that level of self-awareness to know, okay, well, this task isn't that important. I can approach, I can have grace on myself if I don't get it done because I need to get the 4 other tasks that are more pressing and deserve my energy done. And then, you're still holding yourself accountable, right? So I think they just kind of work together. I think when you nail down the way you talk to yourself and you treat yourself, you naturally become your own accountability partner by default.
I think there's a couple of things I'd like to reemphasize. First of all, you said one of the things I think is so important to accept is that life is happening for us, not to us. When you make that shift in your life and your understanding and your inner voice, because your inner voice speaks the truth of who you are, that's huge. That's a huge step. And then the second piece I always like to talk about when you think about the things that have happened in your life, that they all can be put into 2 categories: a lesson. Life can be a schoolhouse for you. Your past can be your schoolhouse, or it can be your prison. Mm-hmm. And by prison, I mean, it's something that's happened to me that I always revert back to. It always comes up again and again and again. And we all know those people that in a conversation, that thing it comes in and it comes in again. And it's like, God damn, dude. Yeah, I know that happened. That was 10 years ago. It was 15 years ago. It ain't going to fucking change unless you change.
Yep.
And that right there, those 2 little things to change our inner voice can make a huge difference.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. And you're right. The hardest thing I had to learn how to do was accepting that life happens for me, not to me. I think by and large, we're all raised that way, right? Like, my parents, my grandfather was a World War II veteran. There's some time there. I've got family members that were Vietnam veterans, and the way they were raised affects how they raised their children, affects how they raised us. And they weren't taught those things. We weren't taught those things either. I was born in 85, right? So you've got 3 or 4 generations there between my grandfather and me where, we weren't taught these tools and these things. And I'm mad about it, man, because these are the secrets that I think, I would have had a way better career in the Army. I would have been, way more productive in school if I would have just had these tools to deal with these things, I think.
I'm curious, how much of that do you think is, and to get my phrase right on this, the onus of control of is it me or is it or is it external, like that internal onus of it's like, hey, or locus, not onus, locus of control, where it's like, hey, I am the one controlling versus the world is controlling me. Because I think that's always an interesting piece. I know that an external locus of control correlates with more depression and those kind of things as well.
Yeah, it's a shift for sure. I think we all walk around before we learn about this stuff with the external influences controlling everything. We think that's the way that has to be. For me, it was by and large when I realized that I'm capable of more than anyone has ever given me credit for in my entire life. and B, that I can do anything that I want to live my life the way that I want without having to give a flying fuck what anybody else thinks, that's when it shifts to the internal locus of control, and you're basically impenetrable at that point. I mean, you have some soft chinks in the armor that, the bad habits and the voices can slip back in, but by and large, you're very, very aware of it, and you have the tools to be able to maintain that internal locus of control, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes great sense, and that's where we should all strive to be, is control what you can control and accept whatever else happens as it happens.
That's it.
It's there's no zennier way to say that than that. That is how you live life, and how you live life in the pursuit of happiness, which, good grief, folks, if you ain't doing that, what the hell are you doing? I mean, if you ain't pursuing happiness, why?
Can I tell you? I'll tell you the answer why. Because I'm getting, I love to drop my BoJack Horseman quotes, Dad. But there's one where it's like, because you are responsible for your own happiness. And if you don't want to be responsible for your own happiness, then it's external. It's no longer me. It's not my fault. It's not. I don't need to take control over it. And yeah, you are responsible for your own happiness. You have to go to create that. But if you have that external locus of control, then you can't make that switch to then pursue it yourself, because you're just waiting for it to come to you.
Again, back to taking action.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And taking action. Let's talk about how you created the business, because taking action is one thing. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I've found with all the veterans I know, to include the one I look at in the mirror every morning, is to ask for $1 for a service always is the largest hurdle. And that's the most important, one of the most important hurdles you have to overcome in order to have a business. Let's talk about that shift, and when you shifted into entrepreneurship, and hey, could you pay me $1 for doing that for you?
Yeah, like I said, when I started, I was throwing shit at a wall. I had no idea, what direction I was going. So my early offer through the communities that I was a part of and the mentors that I had was a coaching offer, a one-on-one coaching offer. And I value my time. I'm not cheap. And, I'm sorry if you don't agree with it, but I started at $100 an hour because I know that I'm worth that. It's since moved up. If you want a 1 hour coaching call with me, it's $200. My time is valuable. So the way that I got to the point where I gave away so much of my knowledge, just hours and hours and hours of time. I struggled with this, particularly because it's the veteran space. And how can I be up here preaching about saving veterans' lives and our brothers and sisters, and then ask them to pay me money? I struggled with that so much. I still feel kind of shitty about it. It is what it is. But at some point, I had a veteran come to me, did a 1 hour call with him, gave him some of the tools, and then did a follow-up with him to find out that because I gave it to him for free, he didn't do any of the work. He didn't take any action. And I started thinking about that and having conversations in these groups that I was in, and realized I'm just as guilty of that. I have a folder with some swipe files for some other business ventures that I tried at one point with a lot of valuable information in it. And it, to this day, is sitting on my desktop. I'm looking at it right now, and I've never opened it. Right, because it was free. I had put no skin in the game, and so then as I started the podcast and started diving into the world of veteran communities, particularly the Facebook ones that are out there, and discovered how absolutely fucking toxic and unhelpful those communities are, I quickly realized I needed to create a community for like-minded veterans in the pursuit of business to come be vulnerable in their transition, talk about the things that are going wrong with them, and, have a member driven community where it's no fluff, no filler, no guru bullshit in there. It's like, what do you want to know? What class would be helpful for you? And I'll put it together and it'll live inside the community. So, when I came to that realization, I was like, fuck, this is a lot of work. This is a lot of work. It costs me money to host the community on a platform. It costs me money to put on the podcast. It costs me money to do a lot of things. And I was like, I can't keep giving stuff away for free. Because, A, it costs me money. B, when I give it away for free, they don't take the action on it. And so finally I was just like, no, like I know what value I provide to people. And if I build it, they will come and they will pay me money. And that's really how I got over it. I just slapped it up there, launching the community on August 1st. It launches at $20. If you buy in this weekend, Monday morning, it's going to $30. September 1st, it's going to $50, and that's the way it's going to be. If you want in, come. If you don't, sorry you missed it. Maybe you'll get in as we continue to raise prices. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really curious about that because there's this interesting thing, and actually this relates back to a lot of the other stuff we're talking about because it's one of those kind of conversations, which is good. But when you make that change, there's this idea of that feeling going away. That it's like, well, once I just start charging folks, then all of a sudden I won't even think about it anymore. I'm sure that's not true, Adam. Could you talk some about, maybe how long it took you to be comfortable with that idea?
I'm not comfortable with it. I still feel
that's the answer I wanted.
I do. I still feel kind of grimy, and I'll tell you why. Because I didn't know what I didn't know, and I was warned about starting a community and the time suck that can be. But also, I feel this giant, way more responsibility. And I know this is going to sound really counterintuitive, because I've led men into combat, right? But I feel more responsibility with people who are paying to be a member of my community to create value than the responsibility of a platoon's worth of men's lives in my hands, which I know sounds really ridiculous, but if you're taking a chance on me to pay me this amount of money a month, and I still don't think $50 is a lot. I talk about this a lot because I've caught scrutiny for being, a for-profit company. And to those people, I say, fuck you, because my time is valuable. But
I'll add the secondary fuck you on that also. So there you
go. And for me, it's really like, I can justify the $50 a month because I guarantee you every single one of us on this call blows $50 a month on shit that is consumable, that doesn't matter in the long term, that's probably not good for us anyway. I've got a vaping habit that's 2 weeks worth of vape. You know what I mean? Like, done, right? Gone. And I'm going to do that regardless. So to answer your question, Cameron, I really don't feel comfortable about it. I feel this incredible sense of responsibility. I'm currently in this kind of like valley right now, which is, I think, where a lot of people quit, is I can't get members to join my community. I don't know what is wrong. It's not the messaging, because I know how to push on the pain points. I know how to talk about all of these things. I do meet hundreds of meetings a month with other people, tell them about the community. They want to make more introductions, but people won't invest in themselves. And so I think that's starting to make it easier for me to not care that I charge them money, because they're showing me that they're not willing to invest in themselves to be better, but they're telling me that they want to do the things that they need to do to get better. And it's like those two things don't work together, right? Like, if you're not going to invest in yourself, then you can't get better.
Yeah. It's a want to want, not a want. Yeah,
exactly.
Well, and there's this weird human nature. And I think it became clear to me when I was working for a nonprofit years ago, about 10 years ago or so. And I realized, from the inside looking out, how willing people were to throw their time at something, to volunteer their time to let's say, do a soup kitchen, right? They were willing to throw their time at it, vice $20. Mm-hmm. And the $20, in the organization I was working in, it would have been much more helpful for us to have the $20 than to have, you come and help pack gift boxes or some shit like that. It's like, great, thanks. Now my people that I'm paying full time, they get it done in 4 hours or sometimes longer because they got to explain everything. But it's a weird human dynamic. It may be more of an American cultural dynamic.
I have a philosophy on this.
Yeah. Let's go.
Okay.
I really think it's because people value money more than they value time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big problem because money is by and large, one of my business partners, he says it's all made up and it doesn't matter. That's how he views money. And it makes a lot of sense if you think about it, because I know this is your podcast and I'm not supposed to ask questions, but when's the last time you had cash in your wallet, to either of you? A significant amount of
this morning to pay that guy to cut down the tree.
But other than that, you probably don't carry cash regularly, and a lot of us don't. I'm guilty of it too. So by and large, that means money is ones and zeros on a computer screen.
Yep.
Right? We print money here in this country like it's going out of fucking style, and it's biting us in the ass right now. That's not a big secret, and that's as far as down that rabbit hole as we'll go. But you can't make more time. I don't know how much time I have on this earth. I have no idea, but I know every day that goes by, my time becomes more valuable because I'm not getting that 24 hours back. Am I going to die at 70? I have no idea. Am I going to make it to 70? I have no idea. So that tells me that my time is far more valuable than money. And so I'd rather donate the $20 than donate you the 2 hours. I'm sorry, and it's not true for everything. I do donate a ton of my time to the nonprofit work that I'm doing right now. It's not paid, it's volunteer, but it's a mission I believe in, right? And it's worth my time. However, if I could, if I had faith that the nonprofit was going to be able to carry out its mission by a significant amount of money, I would rather donate the money than the time.
Well, and there's also a decision point that you make too, because sometimes the action of doing the thing gives you some fulfillment.
Oh, absolutely.
But I do agree with you on the whole aspect of, you come to this realization. There's certain points, and I can almost to the day name when it happened for me. And it was about a year. It wasn't even a year after I retired that I realized to myself, I could put down the wood floor in my house. I know how to do that. I've done it before in an older house. But is my time, I could pay a dude who could do it in 3 days where it would take me 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. And my time, because at the point that was for me, the point was when I was consulting and I knew what my hourly rate was. And I did a little quick math equation. It's like, pay this guy about $40, $50 an hour, or pay myself $150 an hour.
Yeah.
I was like, whew, dude.
Yeah.
Did you have that moment? Have you seen that in yourself where it's like,
Oh yeah. It's like I said before we started recording, I'm the guy that will pay somebody to do manual labor because, not that I'm not capable of. The best example I can give you is we bought this house last year. My wife picked out this really awesome backsplash for our kitchen, and I'm not an experienced style guy. I could figure it out. I can watch the YouTube. and we could go to YouTube University and literally learn anything. And I'm a visual learner and a hands-on learner. So YouTube is perfect for me. So I watch an example and then I just execute with my hands. Right. So, but I started looking at it and I was like, well, the tile we chose has got some brass in it. That means a wet saw is not really going to cut it well. I'm going to have to go buy more materials. Moral of the story is I ended up paying the guy less than I paid for the materials to install the backsplash. And that's a project that would have taken me probably 3 or 4 weeks, like you said. So at the end of the day, it's time. I think to better answer your question, I was given advice a lot when I started, doing everything that I'm doing was like, let go of the money, let go of making money and value your time more. Because when you let go of making money, it's really weird how this happens, but money has a way of then finding you. So when money is not the driving force behind what you're doing, and like what you were saying, Otis, with donating your time, absolutely 100% can fill your cup. Oh man, it's so great. It's why I have a podcast. It's cathartic for me. I get to put people on a platform that I have built. I get to watch, people interact with that, watch them get new clients, knowing that I had a hand in all of that it's so rewarding. And what did it cost me? It cost me an hour and a half of my time. That's way more fulfilling to me than $300 for an hour and a half of my time, because what is that $300 going to do? It's going to go buy me food, or it's going to buy me something that I probably don't need, that doesn't really mean anything. But
hey, that new pistol, you always need that new pistol, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I managed a gun store at one point in my life, so I very much know what you're talking about there. That was terrible, trying not to spend my paycheck on.
Oh my God. That would, yeah. How about being in the candy store?
Yeah. But I really do believe that, man. Like, me helping Jessica for an hour and a half is way more valuable to me than the $300 that she would have had to pay. Like, I just think that, when you learn how to let go of it's really just kind of misplaced. You're looking for money to solve your problems, and it's just not. There's plenty of billionaires out there that are fucking miserable human beings, and they don't know what the fuck to do to be happy. And I'm determined just to not be one of those people.
What do y'all think leads to that kind of miscalculation, or that, that negative pattern of, not recognizing the value of your own time and those things? Because part of me, even as you were talking, Dad, about your consulting, I think I've gone through this some, and don't get me wrong, I am doing an insane amount of house projects right now. So I might be an outlier in this example anyway, but there's this thing of like, well, yeah, I value my time at $30 an hour. So therefore, if it's anything less than that, then I should pay somebody to do it. But at the same time, if I'm not literally getting that check for it, or if I'm not literally being paid at that hour, if I'm not literally substituting the time, then it kind of muddies the math a bit. Would y'all agree that that's why a lot of folks fall into that pattern, or what are your thoughts there, Adam?
Oh man, that's yeah, I think really it's how we were all brought up. It's society's fault that we look at it that way, and that we don't know how to value our time. And so I think there's a lot more that goes into it, right? Like, my father, he's worked with his hands for 40 years. He has basically remodeled his entire house and refuses to pay people to do any of that stuff. But also, what do I know about my father? That's what fills his cup up. Mm-hmm. So creating something, or building something, or adding this piece onto his house, or putting the new roof on is what fills his cup. That truly brings him joy. So I think it's a matter of understanding, like, is this something that I really want to be doing? Do I have a need to learn how to do this? Do I have a want to learn how to do this? And then is it worth investing my time in, versus I know that I don't have a need or a want to learn how to fucking tile a backsplash, so I'll pay the dude $600 to do it, right? Yeah. I don't have a need or a want to seal the grout in my house, so I'll pay the guy $900 to come and in 2 hours seal my entire house, and I never have to worry about it again. Oh, and by the way, he'll leave me a little bit of extra material that I can go and spot treat later. So I think that's really, it's understanding that we have a skewed relationship with money. I grew up in Southern Indiana. I wouldn't say I was dirt poor, but we didn't have a lot. I mean, my clothes came from Goodwill. My brother got my hand-me-downs. We didn't really know if we were going to have dinner some nights. Leftovers were like, that was a real thing. We don't throw food away kind of thing. So I think a lot of that shapes our relationship with money and our perception of money, and it takes the focus away from our time. Hopefully that's a decent answer to your question.
I got a bigger question to follow it up with, though, just to keep us in line with what we've been talking about.
Of course.
Because you did one of the things, and I'd say it's a bit of a pet peeve of mine, which is the society blame. I joke about the if you make it a big bad guy, then I don't have to go fight the big bad guy because I can't fight him. It's he's an evil supervillain. It's like we do this thing with society and all these kind of things. These words that we throw the problem to. What is your flip of that? Because I know you have one, Adam, of the internal locus of control for that answer.
So understanding that you don't have to cave to societal pressures, right? That's the flip to it. So you are in control. It's just, I just mean from like a developmental standpoint, I didn't have any locus of control over how I was raised or what I was being taught. And so that's what I mean when I say it's society's fault, because you can go all the way back to the early 1800s and Dale Carnegie saying, I want a nation of doers, not of thinkers. So now our public education system is structured to create factory workers who can work, 10, 12 hours a day for the cause, right? And so that's how we were all raised. That's why I say it's society's fault. And when you take back that internal locus of control and you understand that I don't have to fucking fit in society's box. I'm a human being that doesn't have to play in this sandbox. I can go to the other sandbox if I want to, and there's no rules against it. That's when you really start to change your perception. So I didn't mean to push on your pet peeve.
No, that's all right. I wanted to ask that because I could tell that you had the good reason for it, and it wasn't just the big bad guy, which I think a lot of people do. That's why I wanted to make sure I drilled on it. Yeah,
I don't deal in absolutes like that, and it was my pet peeve when I was in the Army. A private come to me and say, "They said," well, who the fuck is they? Tell me who the fuck they is.
Specialist Jones.
Yeah, right. And so, again, like I said, we don't have control over the school systems that we go through. We don't have control over the curriculum that's being taught to us. The powers that be have created all of that stuff. And I think they did it in a malicious way to hide all of these things from us. I definitely will say that. And it is a big problem, and it's a bigger problem than any of us can tackle. But where do you start? By turning inwards and realizing you don't have to play in that sandbox. You can go choose another sandbox. And
yeah, that's so true. That just because it is that big problem doesn't mean that the answer isn't right here. And I love that. Yeah. Go ahead.
It comes back to self-awareness, and through self-awareness, you understand self-value. And when you understand self-value, you understand what time is to you.
Yeah.
And that's when I think you start to make those adjustments that, yes, there's satisfaction in working on my own car, right? There's some satisfaction to that, but there's also the realization that, my 2017 F-250, dude, I ain't even going to change the oil in that thing. I prided myself on Old Gray. Nobody touched Old Gray, and nobody touched my MG. But me. They were my babies for a long time. And then some things started changing, and you start to have there's a little bit of inconvenience that you realize. There's a little bit of different cost, and you start to see, well, you know what? I can have, F-250 a little bit different than a MG or, Old Gray. I could have somebody change the oil on an Old Gray for $20.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Or I could spend $30 buying oil and filters at the Walmart and
then investing the hour of your time.
Yeah. Yep. And an hour of my time. Right. All those sort of things. You start coming to that realization. And I think it all comes into self-value and that self-awareness to have the self-value.
I was just going to say, while we're doing project math, that's times 3. That's 3 hours. It should take you an hour, but it'll take you 3.
Right. Well, and it works both ways too. And I can give you a prime example. I had some electrical equipment. So like the TV in our bedroom, when we were struck by lightning a few weeks ago, got fried. And I started doing some research because a new TV to replace it is, let's just say $700. So I got on the YouTube again and I started looking, and I was like, okay, how hard is it to diagnose like what's going on with this? Well, I looked it up. And what I came to find out is you remove 16 screws from the back of the TV and pay $60 shipped. And in a week, you have the parts to replace the whole everything. And it will take, I think it's literally 4 screws on each board. There's only 2 boards. I make 2 connections and I put 16 screws back in and hang it on the wall and it works again. Now, was it worth my time? Yes. Why? Because I'm going to save $700, 10 times what the parts to fix it actually cost, right? So back to what we were talking about, being self-aware and understanding, do I have the capability to do the thing that needs to be done? Yes. Am I going to save time? Well, yeah, I am, because now I have to go shop for a TV. Now I have to get the TV in the truck, get it home, get it out of the box, get it all rigged up to put on the wall, get it put on the wall and plugged in, then set the whole thing up. Like, no, I don't need to go through all of that. I save 10 times my money and invest 15 minutes of time.
And you know what? You get a little dude credit too. Every time one of your buddies come over to watch the game, you'd be like, "Yeah, I fixed that fucking thing."
Yeah. Well, and secretly, I kind of like it. I like.
There you go.
The internals of electronics fascinate me, so it's kind of a win-win-win for me.
all jokes aside, that's that self-awareness, though. You get the value from it, right? It's your perceived value. If you come on, who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and if I was to add to my list of things I learned today, starting with it ain't the YouTube anymore, just like it ain't the Facebook apparently anymore. I don't know why, but what I learned, I had a thought. So we've talked about Tribe and Purpose. We talk about back page ideas, right? Take your notebook and you flip it to the back page and you write down that idea, and then it's safe, right? And eventually someday magically I'll come back to one of those ideas. I had a thought when we were talking about the voice, that inner voice, that inner negativity voice. And what if you had a second back page? You had the good idea and they don't say this, and you wrote it down just to capture it. And you said, and you took that as an action. Every time you said that, well, you know, I ain't smart enough to do that. Okay, there I go again. Let me write that down.
Yeah.
It's going to make a mark in your mind.
Yeah.
I hadn't quite put it together and to simplify it with second back page doesn't work because there's only one back page. But just something to think about.
I got something for that. Maybe. I'm not a big note taker in like a notebook, but I am a big voice notes guy. What if you did, and I think this could be ultra powerful. What if you took those negative things, you put them on a voice note and listen back to how you're talking to yourself?
Yes. So I love that app because I was going to say
becomes external back to you.
Yep.
Yes, sir. And I bet you'll be disgusted with how you're talking to yourself. I bet you it'll make you feel about this big, and I bet it'll force that self-awareness and the realization that you probably shouldn't be doing this to yourself.
Oh, I love that. I do an exercise with my clients. I call it like the mental fight. And I always talk about that analogy of it's like somebody walking down the street just yelling shit at you. And you're just like, oh, God, that guy's right. I am an idiot. Like, it's like, no, you're going to go over and smack that guy in the face. Like, what are you talking about? And having that voice coming back at you, it's like, yeah, now you're arguing right back. And that's what I do with the clients. It's like, literally, I'll take something they tell me and that they're telling themselves, and I'll say it back to them. They're like, whoa, Camden, what are you doing? It's like, why are you talking to yourself like that?
Exactly. Yeah, we justify the way we talk to ourselves when we wouldn't talk to another human that way, and we shouldn't. And so, just adding to your idea, Otis, I think that could be powerful.
Yeah, I love that. Camden, how about you? What'd you learn?
I got a good one today, actually. So I remember back in my finance classes for ag business, we talked about something called the time value of money. Basically, the idea that money right now is more valuable than money in the future because you can invest in different things like that. Well, the time value of time. You take that time now and invest it into stuff, you get a lot more time in the future because you are going to build on it. You're going to get those dividends just like an investment of money. So TVT, time value of time, something good to keep in mind.
Awesome.
And if there's not an economist out there, I do not have an economics degree. I have an agricultural business, economics, and management. So I don't know if I'm qualified to talk econ on that level, but it's going in the book.
There you go. There you go. Adam, how about you, man? What'd you learn?
Man, I learned so much. First, before we even started recording, and this is not the thing, but I learned that these two are father and son. Yes, that's embarrassing because I don't believe Camden had his last name up when we did the initial meeting. I also learned I've never heard of the back page notes thing. So that's actually pretty cool. And I may actually try that, even though I just said I'm not a guy that writes things down. I actually do kind of like that because I'm very OCD about how my notes go and not skipping pages in my notebook. So maybe it'll force me out of my comfort zone. But the biggest thing that I actually learned, and this may be, I don't know, you might think this is a cop out, but I learned that it's possible for me to do what I want to do. My father is my hero. I love my father more than any man on this planet. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but he truly is my hero. And I'm driven so much because I want to retire my father. And you guys are an awesome example of how a father and a son can work together and how I can actually try and appeal to my father and fold him into some of the stuff that I have going on, like maybe a podcast. So I learned that it is possible for family to actually put on a really good program and get along and do that. And that I'm on the right path with, being driven by retiring my father and wanting to do right by my dad because he did right by me growing up. So thank you both for that very much.
Awesome.
Hey, and Adam, I'll tell you that a big piece of why I love working with Tribe of Purpose is not retiring him, because that man ain't retiring, but it's to help him grow his business, help build his dream also. So I can totally relate to that. I get it.
Yeah, like I said, my dad has worked. He fixes commercial kitchen equipment. I mean, he's worked with his hands for 40 years, and he's never going to retire. There's never enough money. It's always something, and that is, I just want to get him to a point where he can allow himself to have the things he's wanted his whole life. And I see that in both of you. I see that, Camden, with what you just said and wanting to further your dad's business because your dad has given up so much for you and our country and all of that. And then, it's just, I bet it's the coolest thing ever. I can't even imagine how cool it is to get to host a show with your father and your son. That's awesome.
I'll add, people say that, and it's pretty cool now, and I can only imagine how cool it'll keep getting, because that's the thing. We're always growing it, always getting better at it, always improving. That's what makes it even cooler.
So hopefully what I learned is you guys should be proud of that, man, because that's a big deal to me.
Well, thanks. Adam, how do folks find you, get in touch with you?
Yeah, easiest way to find me is my website, thestrategicveteran.com. It will have everything that I'm involved in there. If you don't want to go to my website for whatever reason, that's too much to type, you find me on LinkedIn, Adam Peters, little salute emojis next to me. I'm the only one on LinkedIn with those next to my name. So you can find me there. That's where all of my social engagement goes on. Don't reach out to me on any of the other platforms because I won't answer you. It's too much shit to keep up with right now. So
yeah, back to that time thing we were talking about, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Well, awesome. Thanks for being here today, man. We really enjoyed it.
Nah, brother. Super grateful, for the opportunity to come on and give some of my insight and hopefully create value for your listeners. And I'm the grateful one, man. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank you all for listening to today's episode of 10X Your Team with Cam Otis. And a special thanks to our guest, Adam Peters, for joining us today. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at 10X Your Team. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to pass along to other lifelong learners in your tribe so they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, the full archive of episodes available at www.10xyourteam.net. Thanks again, and we'll see you all next time.